Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and this show is called Let's Live with Thurman Greco, and it's coming to you from scenic downtown Woodstock, Channel 23, and later on YouTube. And I am very, very excited about this show because it's one of a series of interviews that we have about people who are running for office in our community. And you know, this is where our country really is most effective. Democracy really, for me, is most effective and most important on the local level. And so I'm always excited to have this opportunity. And I'd also like to add one small editorial here. We have 3 people who've been in this community for several years, who are currently working in this community on a civic level. And they are running. They have one brochure that they're passing out. It came in the mail. One came in the mail for me. But I think it's important, if you're just tuning into this, to know that these three people are very committed to Woodstock, but they're not necessarily committed to having the same opinions all the time. And I really, really like the 3 of these people because they have 3 different ways that they come to a decision. We have Anula, who is, she's a civic worker. And you know, a community activist is extremely important, but very different from a politician. Mm-hmm. They come to their decisions differently. They discuss, they think about the different problems that they have in different ways. So that means that when you have these 2 people coming together, then you have approached the problem in 2 different ways, and you have come to the same conclusion, which means that you've got something positive. And then we have this lady who is a project manager. And you know, it's project managers in community, they're not all that prevalent, are they? There are not that many of you out there, are there?
Well, it helps. I think that's probably a true statement, although we do have some excellent project managers in Woodstock. Kirk Ritchie is an example who did the comprehensive plan, but it's helpful to have a project manager because you can go from where you are today, know where you want to go, and get there. And a professional project manager can help you get to the end game and complete tasks, and that's the value of a project manager. Not too many people have that title. Some people know how to do that, but a project manager does that as their day job. So yes. It's a good skill to have.
So these are 3 skill sets and 3 people who are working together. So I want to start off and ask you to introduce yourself to the television, and then we'll go from there around the room, around the table.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Anula Cordes, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. A little bit about me. I was born in Albany, New York, spent the first few years of my life in Schenectady, and then my immigrant parents moved to New Jersey, where they built a successful business. That's where I learned the value of hard work and the importance of integrity. I moved to Woodstock in 2015, and I jumped right into our community. I moved my healthcare technology company to Ulster County. I'm the CEO of a company that helps clinics create jobs and help people to afford their medication, particularly in lower income communities. And then I co-founded the Women's March, which brought together so many different people from all over, really, came into Woodstock. And it activated us. It really activated people of all ages and backgrounds, and folks became really involved in local and national government. And then as a result of the Women's March, I worked with Supervisor McKenna and our county legislator, Jonathan Hepner, to start the Woodstock New York Human Rights Commission. And I was appointed the first chair. I was appointed for 2 terms, which equals 4 years. And then I stepped down figuring that someone else could take that and grow that in a different direction. So that's a little bit about me. And I believe in the things that I think our community believes in: a clean environment, access to clean water, affordable housing, good police policy, and real engagement and assistance for our elders and youth. So these are some of the things that I believe in.
You bring an interesting skill set to this community, and I think there's an extra bonus there. First of all, your family is first generation American, is that correct?
I'm the first generation
You're the
American.
first generation, and coming to Woodstock, it was always interesting to me to talk to people, and they'd say, well, we've been here since blah, 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 and we've been here since, and then I would say, well, I've only been here 7 years, So you do bring a different perspective, because people who have lived in Ulster County have an eye on the past, and you're kind of looking forward, because you're new, so that brings something new and different.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think the past is very important, and there are things there that we want to preserve and we want to cherish. However, we are looking forward and who and what we're going to be as we move forward.
Tomorrow is always coming.
That's right.
But we are, in Woodstock, always looking with an eye toward the past. And that's because we are very conscious of our history. And it's very important to us. You're just really aware that Woodstock has a past and a present and a future, and you help bring that together. And how can you introduce yourself to everyone?
Well, so I moved to Woodstock in 1980. I grew up in the Northeast and came here again in 1980. I met my late husband Jerry and moved up to be where he is. And my profession is I am a professional project manager. I had a lot of years as a manager and in a project management profession. So right now I'm purely a project manager, not a manager. But I began my work in the town, believe it or not, with the dog park of all things, which was a great way. My late husband had just passed, and I talked to the supervisor at the time, and I said I'd love to get involved in town. And where I was at that time, that was kind of a nice thing to get into to ease myself into things. And I did from there go on the planning board and was deputy supervisor and now on the town board. So besides in my day job where I am a professional project manager in my day job, I have had those different roles here in the town of Woodstock. And in my second term especially, I feel very good about the accomplishments that we can get into later, but I have gotten a lot of momentum. And what people don't all know is I'm also a landlord. So I say I have 3 part-time jobs because now my day job I'm doing 3 days a week, and the town board job as a council member is a part-time job. And I actually am a landlord right now for a building in Kingston, which is a halfway house that I partner with Family of Woodstock. And they put people in, I'm responsible for the building, but they'll put people in who are trying to get their lives back together again, and they need a place to live as they get their lives back together again. So that's the other thing people may not know about me.
That's an essential thing to know. I would like to ask you, are you still connected with the dog park at all?
From the standpoint, yes. I was there a couple of weeks ago with Fran Breithoff, who is the dog park committee chairperson, and also Hattie Isles, and we were looking at the fencing because the fencing needs to be shored up in a couple of places, and Al has said he'll go out there with me so I can show him the places. So I am affiliated from the I'm always a friend of the dog park. And what I loved is we were out there, I think it was a Tuesday afternoon from like 3 to 5, and there were a total of 10 dogs using the dog park. So since I'm not out there that much myself, I don't have a dog, I didn't know how much it was used, and it was fabulous to be out there and see all those dogs coming and going. Not all at the same time, but we were there for 2 hours. People would bring their dog. They could run. It's the only off-leash area, public area in Woodstock for dogs, and so people were loving it. So I think it's important that we do keep it going, and I do need to get out there with Al now. He said he'll make himself available and go show him what needs to be shored up for the fence.
The dog park, very few people know about the dog park. We need more, I think, advertising. When it was, several years ago, I used to go out there very often because I had these 3 unruly Chihuahuas. And as far as I was concerned, they were just perfect, but Chihuahuas are Chihuahuas. One thing I will say, and they were little teensies, one thing I will say is that you were out there 2 hours in the afternoon and 10 dogs came. There's a crowd that comes in the morning.
Oh, okay.
And they are a very close-knit group of people.
Yeah,
you know, and they're the large dog crowd,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And you would see around about 11 o'clock, you'd see a large group, I mean more than 10,
Yeah.
of very large dogs. And of course, it took me a while to realize I can't bring my Chihuahuas out. There's a dog,
A small dog. There's a small
and-
dog space and a large dog.
right, but Chihuahuas don't know that they are small dogs, so they don't act right, you know. So I had to change my schedule, but I am very fond of that dog park.
Yeah.
It's unique, and if anyone has a dog and they haven't been there, it is worth it. And this is a bonus for residents of Woodstock, and they don't even know about it. It's a surprise. You have to find out about
A
it.
hidden gem.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is, and it's wonderful.
Well, and then people that come to use it might be stopping in town and shopping in shops or different things. So
Yeah.
it is a good thing for the people of the town and the town itself.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And two things if I could just add real quick. So speaking of history, where Anula is first generation, I actually am a descendant from John Howland who came over on the Mayflower. And he had 11 children, so I have a lot of cousins.
I guess you do.
You know, I have roots also.
Yeah?
I came in through the DeGraffenreeds Reeds in the Carolinas.
Ooh.
And that's been something that I haven't told people about in a long time. And while you were talking, I was thinking, oh no, the DeGraffenreeds. Because, you know, when we were early in this country, some of our ancestors were not always the most upstanding people.
Well, for sure. Yes.
You know?
Well, embarrassingly so. Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know,
Totally.
so that's how it goes. So now we go to,
Thurman. I'm Bill McKenna. I am serving my 18th year on the town board. This is my 7th year as supervisor, the other as council person. And actually, I was trying to do the math in my head, count up mentally. You brought up an interesting point about diversity and different groups coming together to work. I believe that I've probably served with about 14 or 15 different members of the boards over those 18 years. And it is interesting because each individual comes to the board with a different talent. And, you know, Jeremy Wilbur, who was supervisor for 13 years, I mean, he just had an incredible skill with finance and with writing. We had Ken Panza, who was just, you know, phenomenal at putting data together and recording that. Gordon Wemp was just a bulldog in getting projects done. Steve Knight, another wordsmith. I guess I probably shouldn't have started mentioning because now I got to mention everybody. But Laura and Kathy Magarelli, you know, and it's just getting all these different personalities together. You know, listen, it's work like a marriage or a family because there's diverse thoughts and feelings, but at the end of the day, it really helps to bring about, I think, the best governance. And, you know, there was one thing, I actually responded a little on Facebook today. There's one individual, you know, politicians have to talk about what they've done, and I've made statements. And, you know, usually what I say is under my tenure, under my time on the board, these are things that we got done. And this individual was commenting about how I you know, I'm taking claim for this. And I'm always very quick to say, and I always add, that it's never just me, it's a team effort. You know, my tenure, I saw a comp plan accomplished, but, you know, there was an incredible group that Laura and Kathy Magarelli, Kirk Ritchie were all involved in, and it wouldn't have happened without this group of people. And I like to get in there and be involved, but, you know, I've worked really hard over my 7 years as a supervisor to really kind of learn to step back and let folks do what they need to do. You know, be it the zoning amendments that are coming down now, I've really worked to be hands-off. And sometimes I even sense a little frustration. Well, what do you think? What do you think? You know, when we go out to present, you know, I have a few thoughts and I'll bring them up with everybody else, but, you know, just get the document out. The same with the comp plan. And, you know, I think when the comp plan finally got to me, there were about 4 issues I had with it, and they really didn't have to do with the direction the plan was going, but more, you know, about we should spend money on this or do that, and it was more financial issues, what we could and couldn't do. It was the people's plan, and I think it's a great plan. We're still working off it, so I agree with you, Thurman. It's a group effort, and I'm very excited to be working potentially with these 2 fine candidates. We've worked before together, as Anula mentioned. We worked on the Human Rights Commission. We worked on the Women's March together. Several very successful marches, and I'm excited about moving things forward. So,
You know, also, Woodstock is a very special group of people. And it has always impressed me how different people who are working together in the community bond so well with one another. I remember, it's got to go back 20 years. You mentioned Steve Knight, who is now deceased, was very ill. And we were running for something or trying to get something done. I've forgotten the details now, but there were several of us out in front of the Sunflower one afternoon trying to get something signed, and Steve Knight was there. And he was very ill at that time. And it wasn't a half an hour until I think women began to appear out of nowhere and come up to Steve and hug him and kiss him. And the rest of us that were on the committee were getting a little jealous. Here we were trying to get something done, and everybody was loving up on Steve Knight. But that shows how people care in this community. This is not a casual thing that we are doing. This is an important thing. This is our community, and our sidewalks are important, and our streets are important, and all of those things are important. So that's where we're at now. What are some important things that we're gonna bring to this next to the last group today? What are some important?
You know, I'll start. I mean, housing is a huge issue. It was the #1 issue that came up on the comprehensive plan. The #2 issue was the environment and protecting that. And, you know, sometimes when you think about it, I mean, you could almost say those two items are in contrast, but they're really not. And the Housing Oversight Task Force has done a tremendous job at making recommendations to our zoning law that will help bring about more affordable housing and yet protect the environment even more than we're doing so today. So I'm really excited to see that implemented, hopefully before the end of the year. And with that, though, there are going to be other things the town board will need to act on, you know, over the next 8 to 10 months beyond that. So I'm really excited to see the work continue on housing. I think it's critical for our community to create this housing, to bring in, continue to bolster diversity, to create housing for both the town workforce and the local shops, their workforce, for our volunteer fire department, for our volunteer boards. So that, to me, is really, that's the biggest issue we're facing right now, and I'm excited because I think we've got a lot of great ideas coming down. And then again, what I've mentioned is what I consider the fifth jewel in the crown of building infrastructure is the youth center. So I will be appointing a task force in the next week or so to start to investigate that, and I'm excited about that.
So what do you see, my dear?
Well, similarly, because I've been a member of the Housing Oversight Task Force, and what I do want to say about that is the proposed law is out for public to review and give comments, and I encourage anybody who has a comment to give the comment in, because we're listening. We are going to have another meeting on this coming Tuesday. Housing Oversight Task Force meetings are now going to be open and on the town calendar, so if people want to come in and be part of the conversation, as we proceed with saying, here's what the proposed law is, and what do people think, and what are we going to do about the latest updates. But really, it's so important that we hear from everybody what it is they think, because I think we have a great base, but there are some tweaks already being discussed based on what public comment has already given. I think the youth center is a wonderful thing. I was over, Patrick gave me a wonderful tour of the youth center a couple of weeks ago, and it has a lot of great spaces for kids, but the whole building needs a facelift. Does it need to be replaced or renovated? We don't know yet. When Bill puts the task force together, some answers will come out of that. But it's got nice, the spaces of what it has, the kids can do different things. They have like a movie area, they have a pool, ping pong area, they have a just sit and chat area. They got a kitchen, they have pizza night on Fridays. So when I was over there, it was Friday, and the kids, it was just very well attended. What I do want to say before I forget is I think one of Supervisor McKenna's great strengths is he talks about he's got committees that he can delegate to, and they go off and do their work, and then they come back, and he just has a few tweaks. It's because, in my opinion, he has a real knack of knowing who should be on those committees. Because he'll say, well, we ought to have a planning board member and a ZBA member, and so that's, I think, why there's been so much success over his term and the last 4 years. I've been on for 8 years, but I think I've gotten more momentum in the last 4 years. But I think a lot of the successes have come from the collaboration because we've had great teams. Zoning Revision Committee has been great. When we did the water protection and brought that to completion, Bill assigned a subgroup to work together to get the final mapping. So I think Bill has a great talent of getting the right people on things, and that's why I think we've gotten so much accomplished. But besides that, the environment, I'm working on that $100,000 grant that we did receive. Now that we have that grant for community thermal, Arlene Weissman and I, along with the Woodstock Community Thermal Group, who was wonderful in bringing this whole project to us, is we're working on now that they're doing a feasibility study, can we do community thermal in Woodstock? And that is a way to get green energy, get your heat out of the ground, don't have your fossil fuel, your LP gas, your oil, but how can we move ourselves forward in getting the heat right out of the ground? So I am working that. So environmental, there's a lot. I've been involved with the DOT on the Tinker Street project along with Supervisor McKenna and Complete Streets to get better focus on the sidewalks. Can we get a bike path? And I'd personally love to see us get the sidewalk all the way to 10 Dixon Avenue for the new library. We're not there yet. The Tinker Street project is just funded to go to Schoonmaker Lane. But once we get that, then we just need to go, I think, start finding funding to go take the sidewalk the rest of the way. So between sidewalks, complete streets, making things pedestrian friendly, bicyclist friendly, the environment, there's a long list of things to do for the environment. So composting, the supervisor put $20,000 in the budget for composting.
The supervisor recommended, the town board
Voted. Right.
And, I just want to keep reminding people, and you bring up thank you for complimenting me on putting people together. But I will point out that I am very, very fortunate to live in Woodstock and have such an incredible pool of people to pull from. So,
Yeah.
I am very lucky in that sense. But, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. And I don't want to choke all of Anula's time, so we'll pass it over to Anula.
So I think that the environment is really important, and as Laura mentioned, there are so many different aspects of the environment that we could all focus on, and as well affordable housing, not just affordable housing, but looking at the policies that will support the affordable housing. So I think that that's something that's really important, and I think a vigorous discussion about the zoning proposals is something that we should all be very interested in. And then aside from that, some things that I'm really interested in is once the youth center is built, I'm very interested in looking at the programs. So I think that bringing together our elders and the youth could help us to effect change in our environment so that we could learn from people who know how to clean the trails or maintain things or talk about animal life. So those kinds of things. I would like to see an entrepreneurial program here for youth. And we've got so many folks who are very successful in their careers, and I think that this is something that could be brought into the youth community. I mean, let's help them get started in their lives and support them, and we could all use a mentor now and again. Some other things that are really important to me are the balance between music and families. I think that's something that maybe if we all sit down, we could address rather swiftly with the cooperation of businesses in town. I hope so. And have folks who work and sleep here with families be able to sleep at night, but at the same time be that colony of the arts where we could go out and enjoy the meal and some music and a drink and just gather with our friends and people who are visiting town. I'm a fan of quarterly meetings. I think that when we communicate with people, they hear from our government officials. I think that's really important. And we need to make a little bit of an effort to do that so that they don't get swayed by stories and rumors and all that stuff out there. We want to create a little bit of a direct access. At least that's how I feel. And one thing that ties a little bit into the past and the present, I was thinking as Bill and Laura were speaking, on the Human Rights Commission, one of the things that we did was we opened up our meetings acknowledging the Munsee Lenape people of this land. And I think we should consider doing that for formal meetings. So this way, we remember that this land is very special, as you mentioned. Those are some of my interests.
I think that's wonderful. Did you bring some other things today that you would like to discuss? Yes, okay, she has come prepared.
I did bring early voting information. Should we cover that now? Or should we?
Please.
Okay. So,
Please.
so as people probably know, and today is June 16th. You might be watching this later on YouTube or on the carousel. But in any event, early voting does begin tomorrow, Saturday, June 17th. Woodstock, again, is an early voting site, which I'm delighted about because for a year or so we had to go to Saugerties or Kingston or Olive or wherever. But right here, right in the building where we are right now, there will be in the Woodstock Community Center. Early voting starts tomorrow, June 17th, runs until Sunday, June 25th. I thought they were going to not have it on Juneteenth, which is June 19th, but the schedule from the Board of Elections says yes, they are. They're 9 to 5 a lot of days, but Tuesday and Thursday, they're going to be 12 to 8. So it looks like all those days, Saturday, June 17th through Sunday, June 25th, 9 to 5, and then except for Tuesday and Thursday, June 20 and 22, they'll be 12 to 8. So I did want to make sure people know about early voting, but the regular voting day is June 27th. When I've gone door to door and I say to people, oh, do you like early voting? A lot of people do want to vote on the regular day and go to the regular polling place, and that's totally fine. And I'm a big believer that democracy works best when everybody votes. This is a totally critical election. It is, I'm just going to campaign for a bill for a moment. We have a totally experienced supervisor that has gotten a ton done, and issues do come up. It's a fact. Issues come up, but Bill is on them. And so an issue came up recently, and it might have hit the news about the police department. Well, Bill is already on that. Some people talk about their complaints about things, but Bill is not just complaining. Bill is not even complaining. Bill is in there working it. So as I've seen all the issues that I've been while I've been on the board, issues, they have a way of coming up. Some things you can be preventive and proactive. There are some issues you can avoid, and we do a lot of that. However, some things do just come up, and Bill is great at solving the issues. So there are current issues, but he's out there solving them. So we have an experienced supervisor, and I have a side-by-side comparison we can talk about now or later, but I think keeping the experience is so important. And what not everybody realizes is Bill's opponent is in the middle of a 4-year term on the town board. So his opponent will still be on the town board. If we keep it as it is with Bill as the supervisor, for those that are fans of his opponent will still be on the town board. But we can have Bill's ability, every year the budget has been under the tax cap, every year the actual spend is under the budget. We can have that experience. You talk about different skills. Bill is a contractor. We want to get that youth center done. Well, Bill has the skill. It's more than just hire the architect and let him go at it. You need to have my professional project management coming out here. Projects work best when you have the client really knows what is needed. And Bill being a construction person, to do that youth center, he knows what is needed. He's done construction. He led the community center construction, which was a great, if you remember what this was like before, it's amazing, the transformation. He worked on the highway garage. He's led the Cuomo addition, which is coming along very nicely. We want that youth center done, and you've got somebody who knows, who can work with the architect and say, here's what right is. The architects are very good, but it works best when you've got somebody that knows what right is, who's a collaborative working with them. So I think that the level of experience, and there's so much more that Bill gets done. So I think that it's such a critical election. I hope people, and you need to come out and make your voice heard. If you stay home and do not vote, your voice will not be heard. It is whatever your voice is. I know how I'm going to vote, and I believe in democracy, and I believe everybody should vote the way they think that they should. But the worst thing is to not vote and then say later, "Oh, I didn't know that was going to happen." Well, you need to get out and vote.
Well, so we've got Woodstock. We have this building is a voting place?
Yes, yes.
And is it a voting place every day? What is the situation?
The situation is the Board of Elections website, which is where I printed this from, has the early voting dates and times, and Woodstock is on the list. So we can expect Woodstock to be open every day of these days.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it is wonderful.
Yes.
Yes.
And can I put in a pitch? The Board of Elections needs workers. Now, it's too late for this election, but they do have classes, and it's a lot of fun. I have done it. I have done it, off and on whenever I could, and I am now at a point in my personal life where working an election is not an option for me anymore. So, and it pays well too.
Yeah, you get paid. You get paid, and you're doing a civic duty.
Yeah.
And they'll need people for November. You're right on. You are
They
right on.
really
They need
do.
people for November.
And so if we can get some more people to volunteer, and you can volunteer for all the times, or you can volunteer for one day, and you're paid for training. It's got a lot going for you. Plus, it's a lot of fun, and you do get well paid. So now, tell us again, when does the voting start?
Tomorrow.
Wow.
Tomorrow, June 17th. Tomorrow, June 17th, early voting starts, early voting ends June 25th, and the big election day where all of the polling sites are open is June 27th, which I think is going to be it's normally 6 to 9. It's a primary, but I thought it was 6 to 9. I didn't look that up, but it's usually 6 a.m. to 9 at night.
Yeah.
So one year it was, I thought, noon to 9, but we could double check that.
Now, what are the hours for the Sunday voting? 9 to 5?
Yeah, it's 9 to 5 every day of that day, from Sunday, June 17 to Saturday, June 17 to Sunday, June 25, 9 to 5 every day, except Tuesday and Thursday, June 20 and 22, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. But if you just remember, from 12 to 5, early voting is open every day from 12 to 5. And if
That's
all you
wonderful.
remember is 12 to 5, you'll be able to do it.
Okay.
And the other sites, I'll just say real quick, Kingston is one, Schwangunk, if I said that correctly, and New Paltz. So those are the 4 sites.
Okay.
Thurman, if I could just address something, and Laura, thank you very much for that wonderful plug, but this isn't all about Bill McKenna either. Again, as I said earlier, even though some people think I take all the credit, I cannot do this job alone. No one can do it alone. It really is about teamwork and having good colleagues that you can work with. And, without Anula and Laura, I may not be able to get these accomplishments. So I really ask, if you come out and vote for me, please come out and vote for them as well. It's really critical to have a good team behind you. And, it's not just boards either. Woodstock is blessed to have great employees. I have 7 years as supervisor, worked very closely with the bookkeeper, very closely with Jackie Early and the rest of her crew at the town clerk's office, and it's just that teamwork that really brings out the best for Woodstock. And it's not all about people just marching in lockstep. People are probably tired of hearing me say this, but in all those years that I served with Jeremy, I don't think there was a single time where we ever started a discussion on any issue where we were starting from the same point. It was always a discussion, a negotiation, conversation, and I think I could say the same for Laura as well. More often than not, and it's not that we're necessarily at opposite ends of the spectrum, but there's conversation and there's discussion and there's compromise both ways, and that is really having that ability to do that. That's what's really made Woodstock move forward, and I'm excited to keep that going.
Yeah, and I want to agree with that too, because we're not way far apart usually, but usually we come together, like you had said at the beginning, you said, well, we'll have 3 people who will work together with the different ideas, and then we'll be on the same page. Bill and I don't always actually get on the same page. Because I don't just, he's not going to fold his opinion, I'm not going to fold my opinion either. And in the event we don't get on the same page, so be it. We have a 5-member board, we have 3 is a quorum, the quorum votes. If it hasn't happened very often that Bill and I have not gotten on the same page, but sometimes you have to decide this or that. There's no compromise solution. It's either yes or no. And one time I was no and Bill was yes, and one time I was yes and Bill was no. But it's okay, because respectfully, I just said, hey, here are my reasons. He said, here are my reasons. We respected each other's positions, and the board voted, and we moved on. It was not an issue. But if we don't get on the same page, that's okay, as long as we're respectful and we respect the process, and that we do have a quorum and the quorum votes, and then we do our best to implement whatever the quorum asked for. So, because we do have different opinions. And as people who have worked for me, they have a hard time keeping my opinions quiet. I put them forward. So.
You do, Laura, but that's a good thing.
How about it, Ms. Anu?
So I think that I would not come at it from the same perspective. I think that not being in elected office to date offers me the opportunity to perhaps see where we could move things forward just from a different lens. I've always found working with Supervisor McKenna that he listens and keeps an open door, which is why I feel like this was the right decision for me to run. And same with Laura Rickey. So she's always kept an open mind, and she's also asked tough questions. And I feel that I've had the opportunity to go back to, for instance, the Human Rights Commission, get those answers, think through things, bring it back to the board, and we get stuff done. And we get stuff done very successfully. I think that there's a benefit to having someone come in who has not been in elected office before. So I respect that both Bill and Laura have me here, quite frankly, and I intend to speak my mind. So anyone who knows me knows that I will respectfully speak my mind, and if I disagree, I will just keep trying to find a way to find the one thing we agree on that subject. And I pretty much won't let up until we find that one thing.
Common grounds.
Common ground, right? And then we move it forward, because there will be something that we agree on, because we all care about this town and the people in this town. And so with that as a value system, we will find something that we agree on, and that's our starting point. And that's something I believe in.
I think one of the other things too, people often think if you compromise, you're giving in on your values. And Laura, actually, you put it quite well. In a perfect world, or if I got my way, this is what I'd want. So you're being clear on your wishes, but you also realize, okay, this is not a perfect world, and none of us are going to get everything that we want, and there's going to be compromise, and I think the town always benefits with that. Personally, because I like to think I'm always right, but I know in reality an adjustment from other people is always helpful and beneficial.
Yeah. Well, we get to a better place, because
Yeah.
when I listen to you and you listen to me, and as supervisor, you know the laws very well, right? So I may say, well, why don't we do this? And you'll say, well, the law says this and this. And then we say, okay, now that we know that, let's build on how can we, with that in mind, what do we do next? So that's kind of how it all builds. We get a better solution by everybody sharing.
Those pesky laws.
Well, and I think the opportunity also is to look at those laws and those policies and to
see what we
affect
can change. See what
And
we can
that's,
change, yes.
that's always an angle as well. So that's a skill set that I think we have done in the past with police policy, which was a start, and we can continue that good work. Because those policies are there, but there is this room to improve it because, like was said earlier, there are things that just come up that we couldn't have anticipated, but we have the opportunity to work together to improve those policies, to have things be better, and that's something that's really important as well.
And, you know, it's also critical to remember that it's not just what we do here in town, but we've got a county government above us and the state above them and the federal government above them yet. And it was a week or two ago, and having a conversation with Senator Hinchy about the shady dumping area. And, you know, I forget the exact point she brought up. She mentioned something. I said, well, the state law says this. And she said, well, should we look at changing that? And I said, yeah, that's a fair conversation to have. So she and I are going to be meeting with the DEC in the next week or two to have a conversation, both if there's anything else the state can do and what could the state change to make it not happen in the future. You know, the town of Woodstock, when this came about, we were quick to make a law to regulate fill and grade projects like this so that we don't have this problem in the future before it was legal. Now we've got that protection, but to have the added protection from the state would be very beneficial. So it's all about working with the different levels.
Does anybody have a wish list? What are some things that you would like to see happen in the next, whatever, 5 years, 2 years, 10 years? When you think about being in the position that you are getting voted in for, what is something that you would like?
Well, we touched a little bit on the youth center, for sure. We'd love to see the youth center, whether it's a rebuild, you know, a tear down rebuild, or whether it's a restore. It would be great to see that. I would love to see more with the environment. Well, I'd love to see the housing. The housing committee has brought great ideas. The housing committee has been wonderful. When we did the comprehensive plan, which I was a liaison, as Bill said, we had a whole list of a couple pages of action items, and some of those action items needed to go to a committee that did not exist, and one of those committees was the housing committee. So the housing committee was created, and they've had fabulous ideas for maybe we can look at a town property and make some affordable housing there. They've already started with the Housing Alliance, which is a funding program that will help in certain ways. They're already doing the home share. So I would love to see the housing committee, the things that we already have in progress, and the town is funded. We have the ARP money, and the town took a lot of that. The lion's share of it went over to housing. So I would love to see the housing committee and be supportive of the housing committee with the projects they've already got that have begun, but see them come to fruition. So I think the housing is one. Different environmental things like the community geothermal, getting the heat out of the ground so you don't have to have your oil truck come anymore, or the LP gas. So housing, the environmental, the youth center, those are some main things, and the sidewalks. We want to do better, and if we can get bike paths. I know the Complete Streets Committee they're working with somebody at the county level. Somebody who's on a county committee is part of their meetings and has ideas for how we can go even beyond. You know, could we do something with 375? Wouldn't it be great if here's a real wish list. I would love it if 375, you've got the paved part. I would love to have a grassy area and then a paved walking or bike path so that people that do bike or walk down 375 it's not like right on the road. They're not on the shoulder. They've got a grassy area and they feel protected, so it's safe to walk. I would love to see something like that where we have more bikeability and tying in with the Empire State trails. So, you know, bit by bit, the state is getting more and more trails in place. So I would love to see more biking and walking, make that more feasible for people. So that's a real wish list. easier said than done. These other things I think really are definitely doable. 375 is a state road. Can we find a way to do that? I don't know, but it's a real wish list vision to help people with mobility.
What I would point out though, and that is a great idea, because that would, from the middle of Woodstock, you'd be able to get down to the rail trail and
Yes,
have
absolutely.
miles there.
Yes.
The Tinker Street project that the DOT is about to undertake, I've been working with Dave Corrigan at DOT for years now, trying to get this road finished up. And it took an incredible amount of pushing, and certainly it wasn't just me, but Kevin Cahill helped a lot, Senator Hinchy helped a lot, and it took 6-7 years to get there, probably even longer, because I think Jeremy worked on it as well. So, you keep pushing away, and
Things can happen.
Things can happen, and
Yeah.
you keep working, and eventually it does come around. So
Yeah.
it'll be exciting to see that done as well.
Well, everyone has a vision, and that's how we move forward. And if we begin talking about our vision before it's right there in a committee, then the people in the town have a chance to get accustomed to it. And I know sidewalks have been, especially with the tourists that are stumbling around, that's been out there now for as long as I have been here. I will never forget the first time that a complete stranger came up to me and said, "You've got to do something about there's no," and I'm, wait a minute, I don't think I've met you yet. And she said, "I'm just here for the weekend." And I realized that our community is more than just the few of us. The streets are jammed on the weekends.
Yes.
Sure.
And it was interesting, because I remember when I first got to town 30 some odd years ago, and I have in my mind one January afternoon coming to the end of Rock City Road to pull out on to go down Mill Hill. I was coming from Bill Heckroth's for the plumbing, and there wasn't a single car to be seen. I don't even think there were cars parked on the road. I mean, it was desolate, and pulled out no problem. Now, even in January, you'll see people walking around. I mean, it's not as packed as the summer, obviously, but it's become more year-round for sure.
Well, the town is very healthy, I think, because I remember maybe 10 years ago there was some worry: is the shopping area going to fold? I mean, there was some worry about people that couldn't keep their shop. I mean, now it's very vital.
I remember in 2010, we were interviewing new building inspectors, and one of the concern, I think it was Terry Rosenblum, said to one of the candidates that there were 10 or 12 vacant storefronts
Right.
in town. What are you going to do about it? To the building inspector. Not that they necessarily could, but there were 10 empty stores then.
But things are good. I think things are good now.
That was a time that was really scary. I was in the food pantry, and there were several weeks there where we had all of these empty buildings, and I had store owners, shop owners, bringing their employees in.
Wow. To the food pantry.
To the food pantry.
Wow.
And I really felt like but we overcame it. We did,
Yes.
and we had all those artists that, we don't need to talk about that. We need to talk about the future. But if you do have good future planning, if you do have a wish list, then you have something to look forward to. Listen, we are beginning to run out of time. So do we have some last message before we have to sign off? One thing I would like to bring up is you talked about how there were some meetings now that are open to the public.
Housing Oversight Task Forces are now going to be open to the public.
And do we have any idea when and where they meet?
They meet on Zoom, and the next meeting is this coming Tuesday. I'll look at my count. What day is Tuesday? It is the 20th. So Tuesday, June 20th at 10 o'clock on Zoom. It's on if you go to the town website and look at the calendar, it is on the calendar. So anybody can look at the town calendar to see the Housing Oversight Task Force meetings. And a lot of meetings are just open
How often does it meet?
Well, it meets when it needs to, because we were meeting regularly, but now that the law is out there, we're meeting when we have things to discuss based on feedback.
Oh, that's wonderful. So now the community can participate and Zoom is safe.
Yeah, well, the Zoom is definitely safe. It will be a meeting, just like the town board meeting and a lot of meetings, like when I've been to the planning board, for example, is I'm there as not as an active participant, but if I get called on, I get to talk. So the plan is there'll be public comment at the end of the meeting, and I run my zoning revision committee meetings the same way. Part of I started with a document that says what are our meeting guidelines, and one of them is if we have guests, their contributions will be when the chair calls on them, because we need to still have forward motion of what the team is trying to get done. So there will be public comment in the Housing Oversight Task Force meetings, and but people may not. It may be that they get called on at the end. They may not be called on as the meeting goes on, because it's still a meeting like other meetings where it's the group trying to get a piece of work done, but the public will be heard before the meeting ends.
So the Housing Oversight meeting, this is new that the public is involved.
Correct. And the reason for that, the reason why it was not that way all along, was because we had huge work in front of us. And so as we brainstormed ideas, it can slow you down if people hear a brainstormed idea that's not what the group plans to do, but somebody threw it out, one person threw it out. Somebody can run with that and put it in the press and social media, and now you have to do damage control. And we thought it made the most sense. We had so much to do, just to be heads down, focused, get what we thought the answer was, put that out. Everybody would see the final answer, which people saw it a year ago. Then we made more updates. Now people have seen the version 2. And we thought that was the best way to get this huge piece of work done. But now that we're tidying it up, and it's so important we get community feedback, it makes total sense to be open and have the meetings open now.
No, I think that's a very, very good way to go, because there are many times that the community of Woodstock has chimed in, and if you do have a goal in mind and you have to reach come to a decision, you need to, and I know people want to have open meetings, but still.
Yeah, so you need to get both done. You need the balance. You need to have the forward motion of what the committee needs to get done, but also hear the people, because that's what's going to make this law the best it can be, is the people's input.
Now, do we have a last?
We have a meet and greet. There is one 3 days before the in-person election, so that's going to be the 24th at the Colony out in the beer garden, so it's outside. Hopefully it's going to be a beautiful day. And there are going to be 2 events on that one day, 3 to 5. You can come out and meet the 3 of us there. Margie Zintz is going to be playing and will be circulating and talking to people. And then 6 to 8, we have Obaka Hill. And so she's going to be playing, and hopefully folks come out, and I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Are there posters and things out about Marjorie and Ubaka?
We are doing that. So there's somebody else who's producing this, or a volunteer. Rachel is working on that with the Colony and some folks there. I hope so. But also on Facebook, if people are interested, I am posting about this event. And so you could find me on Facebook and get more information. You could just find Anula Cordes for Town Board.
Okay. And do we have something to talk about still?
Well, I would just remind folks that elections seem to get the big sexy controversies or topics, and a lot of a supervisor and town board's job is day-to-day boring stuff. And it all has to be done. I have the experience. I've put in 7 years now, and I give my heart and soul to Woodstock. So I hope you'll consider supporting me, and I hope you'll consider supporting my running mates, Laura and Anula, as well. So.
And we are now down to Ellen raised her hand. So it's time now to thank Ellen very, very much for doing this. This was a wonderful,
thank you to
wonderful
both of you.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you, Thurman. Both of you are a wonderful.
No, it's really, there's a lot of work involved for Ellen, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ellen.
And if I can do my last thing too,
Please do.
if I may. As I said before, this election is so important. It's so important people come out and make your desires known. I am delighted to be affiliated with Supervisor McKenna, Bill McKenna. To me, it's just the choice is night and day. I am totally believing that Bill McKenna, with his experience and all that his administration has gotten accomplished, it's all been collaboration, I totally agree. But as a leader, he has been a strong leader and has gotten a lot done. I love running with Anula Cordes because we didn't know each other very well 6 months ago, but the more I get to know Anula, the better I like her in terms of she's just so well-grounded, so caring about the people, about human rights, and she has a wonderful perspective to bring to all conversations. I think she's will be a fabulous addition to the town board. I hope everybody votes for her. I hope you vote for me as well. I've worked hard for the town, and I feel like there have been a lot of accomplishments. Just as Bill said, I have a long list, I believe, of accomplishments. They're all from collaboration. It's all because I had great people to work with, great people contributed, and so I was, in some cases, the missing link to get something completed, like the telecommunications law and like the wellhead district water protection law. But it's because there were great people, did so much great work, and I was able to do my piece and be effective at moving things along. So the collaboration is great, but I'm pulling together the sign committee right now. There's just so much still to do and so much I'm midstream on that I want to be able to complete. But I think that if you vote for the three of us, and I hope you do, I know you'll get three people who care about Woodstock and will work well together, and I believe that you will get the best solution of the choices on the ballot this time around.
And thank you all for coming, and thank you again, Miss Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen.
And thank you again, Ellen and Thurman.
Thank you both.
Say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.